What if Tatsumaki was Deku's mother? Chapter 7. Deku sat in class when Aizawa walked in. I hope you all had a good work experience on your internships, because it's time for you to put those skills to good use, said Aizawa. The class looked at him confused. It's time for your final exams, said Aizawa. The class gulped. There will be a written exam, and there will be a physical exam. Train and revise hard, because if you don't pass, you won't be going to the summer training camp, said Aizawa. Aizawa walked out, leaving the class shook. Final exams already? I should get to training. Who knows what they'll throw at us, said Deku. Deku flew out of the room, heading straight for Sight Gamma. About an hour later, Ashito walked down the street of the testing area and saw Deku hovering in the air cross-legged, about 20 meters in the air, surrounded by a spinning vortex of rocks. Yo, Deku, are you busy? Asked Ashito. Deku kept his eyes shut and let out a sigh. What do you want, Ashito? Asked Deku. I want to train together. I was thinking of training with some of the girls, but nothing wears me out like training with you, said Ashito. Deku rolled his eyes, slowly dropping down to the ground. The rocks that he'd been spinning dropped to the ground, forming a ring around him. What do you want me to do? Asked Deku. Gravity training, of course. How high did we get last time? Asked Ashito. I think you got to 7G, but you could barely handle that. Are you sure? Asked Deku. Don't worry about me, said Ashito. Deku shrugged, holding out his hand. A green aura wrapped around Ashito as she powered up to a maximum of 12%. The ground under Ashito's feet cracked as the gravity increased. Perfect. Thanks, said Ashito. Deku rolled his eyes, picking the rocks back up and spinning them around at high speed. What's so special about these rocks? Are these even training for you? Asked Ashito. Deku rolled his eyes again and the rocks stopped mid-air. Without even looking, Deku floated one of the rocks over to Ashito. Hold out your hand, said Deku. Ashito did, and Deku placed the rock in her hand. She immediately tensed her arms with strain as she felt the extreme weight. What the hell did you do? Asked Ashito. Deku took the rock back and pointed behind him. Down the street there was a building that was missing a few floors. I compressed the parts of that building into these rocks. They weigh about 100 kilograms each, said Deku. Ashito looked up at Deku impressed. Not too shabby, said Ashito. Ashito started doing some press-ups, enjoying the effects of increased gravity, whilst Deku enjoyed the peace and quiet. He needed to gain access to the flame of it all inside of him, but nothing was working. Deku was hoping that training his control over his quirk was the answer, but so far nothing was happening. Hey Deku, asked Ashito. Yes, asked Deku. Do you think, if you and Todoroki worked together, you could make a diamond? Asked Ashito. Deku stopped for a second, then let out a small laugh. Didn't even think about that. Maybe you should give it a try, said Deku. Ashito hopped to her feet, shocking Deku. I'm impressed that you can move so easily while into 7 times normal gravity, said Deku. Oh, I thought you turned it off. I can barely feel it, said Ashito. Deku's face dropped. You're joking, right? Asked Deku. Can you stop growing so quickly? Thought Deku. Deku flicked his wrist, immediately doubling the gravity on Ashito. She was now at 14 times normal as she fell down to one knee. Okay, I'm sorry for getting cocky, said Ashito. I knew you were faking it, said Deku. Not completely. 7 times isn't enough. Leave it at 14 for now, said Ashito. Deku shrugged, going back to his training. Focusing, Deku compressed the rocks even more and picked up more rubble, increasing their mass. Forget diamonds. Is it possible to get strong enough to create a black hole like this? Thought Deku. Deku let out a little chuckle, thinking about how insane that would be. He looked down at Ashito, training hard, and let out a smile. She had become a good friend. Whilst he was watching, Ashito started doing some small jumps to try and get used to the gravity, and Deku got an evil idea. He could see all the force she was putting into the jumps, and began planning a little prank. Just as she put all of her energy into a jump, Deku turned off the extra gravity, holding Ashito back as she shot into the air. Oh, what the hell? Said Ashito. Ashito landed gracefully, thanks to her background as a dancer, then glared up at Deku. What was that for? Asked Ashito. Deku floated into the air, laughing, but was cut off when Ashito threw a rock at him. That freaked me out. Don't do that, said Ashito. The two smirked at each other as Deku increased the gravity on her again. The two spent the next week training together. Ashido said it was because he could train more effectively with her, but it was more that she enjoyed spending time with him. Deku wouldn't admit it, but he felt the same way. He pretended that she annoyed him, but in reality he found her incredibly fun to be around. After their written test, it was time for the physical exam. All of the students had gathered outside the test area and were getting ready. "I'm sure you've talked to your upperclassmen and believe that you have an idea what the test will be facing," said Nezu. "Yeah, we'll be fighting robots," said Ashido. Deku immediately face-palmed. "In previous years, yes, you would have, but not this time. We believe that due to the recent uptick in villain activity, we'll need a firmer exam," said Nezu. "See, Ashido, I told you it was a stupid rumour," said Deku. "In this exam, you'll be facing us, the teachers." Deku's heart immediately dropped. The teachers were smart, and he knew that they couldn't beat him or Ashido on a one-on-one. Only Aizawa would be an issue. That means... Deku looked up and saw All Might drop out of the sky. "Of course," said Deku. A few days earlier at Tornado's house. "Absolutely not," said Tornado. "Please don't worry, Tatsumaki. It's only an exam," said All Might. "I don't care what it is. I'm not giving you permission to beat up our child," said Tornado. "There isn't anyone else who is strong enough to take him on," said All Might. "What about Aizawa?" asked Tornado. I have the greatest respect and faith in Aizawa, but Izuku is our son. He would only need one hit and the fight would be over," said All Might. Tornado smirked a little at the pride she was feeling. "Tell me, Tatsumaki, if you fell under a villain's control and started going crazy, who would you trust to take you down on their own? Me or Aizawa?" said All Might. Tatsumaki looked down at the tea in her hands. "Just don't hurt him too bad," said Toshi, said Tornado. Tornado's eyes lit up a little glow as if to say, "Otherwise you'll regret it." "Oh, I'm just as protective of him as you are, I promise," said All Might. All Might stood up, walking to the door, but was stopped when Tatsumaki spoke up. "Toshi, it's good to see you again," said Tornado. All Might smiled. "Yes, it was," said All Might. All Might left and Tornado collapsed onto the sofa. He's as cute as ever," said Tornado. Back in the present, Deku was slowly accepting his fate as All Might walked towards him. "Give it all you've got, you two, because I won't be holding back," said All Might. All Might put his massive hands on Deku's and Ashido's shoulders before walking off. "Well, at least I've got a decent partner," said Deku. "Don't slow me down," said Ashido. Ashido jokingly smirked at Deku, who rolled his eyes in response, but was unable to hide his smile. About an hour later, the two were standing in front of the massive metal doors. They pushed them open and saw the massive fake city. Far in the distance, they could just make out the silhouette of All Might. His massive frame cast an intimidating image. "Okay, smart guy, any strategies?" asked Ashido. "A few," said Deku. "Any of them any good?" asked Ashido. "Not really," said Deku. Deku's eyes went wide as he saw a massive shockwave shooting towards them. Thinking fast, he flicked his wrist, pulling Ashido towards him, then surrounded the two of them with his strongest barrier ever. The two young heroes clung to each other as the fierce wind smashed into Deku's barrier. Using all of his strength, Deku forced the barrier into the ground, making sure that they weren't thrown back. Finally, the winds died down, but they knew that this was only the beginning. Ashido looked up, seeing the smiling face of All Might smiling down at her. Instinctively, Ashido shot forward, trying to punch All Might in his face, but her pink fist was caught by All Might. "A strong punch, young Ashido," said All Might. All Might squeezed Ashido's fist, then flicked her around, slamming her back into the ground. The concrete splintered under the force. Deku looked up, seeing Ashido smashed into the ground, and powered up to the maximum. The green light surrounding his body glowed with power as he rose off the ground. All Might looked over, smirking. "Show me your power, young man," said All Might. Deku held out his hand, and a thick green aura wrapped around All Might's body. Instantly, the ground under All Might's feet cracked and splintered as his personal gravity increased massively. I can't afford to hold back, said Deku. Deku's eyes burned with power as he unleashed everything he had. All Might's feet pushed through the concrete, getting stuck in the ground. 50 times normal gravity would kill anyone but him, said Deku. All Might looked at his son with an impressed smile. A very strong attack, young man, but it isn't enough, said All Might. Without trying, All Might lifted his leg out of the ground and slowly began walking towards Deku. Ashito, get up. He's slowed. This is the perfect time to attack, said Deku. Ashito opened her eyes. She was still dazed from All Might's attack earlier, but she didn't let that slow her down. Powering up to maximum, she jumped to her feet and ran over to All Might. Immediately, she began launching powerful jabs into his back. Her pink fists were a blur as they shot into All Might's body, hitting him in the kidneys over and over again. All Might clenched his teeth in pain, but kept walking towards Deku. Each step was incredibly difficult for him, but he was slowly getting closer. She can't do enough. I need to buy us more time. Deku tried to float into the air, but he couldn't get enough power. He could feel that if he took off, All Might would be released. Ashito's hands were starting to bleed as she pounded on All Might's steel-like body. Change of tactics, said Ashito. Ashito jumped up, wrapping her arm around All Might's neck, trying to choke him out. Swinging off his neck, she used all of her strength to kick All Might in the back of the knee, pulling him down. All Might fell down to one knee, struggling against the incredible power of his protégés. 20%, yelled Ashito. Ashito's body sparked with energy as she tightened her grip around All Might's neck, desperately trying to cut off his air supply. Deku gritted his teeth, pushing out all of his energy, trying to crush All Might into the ground. Ashito, keep it up. We can do it. All Might tried to move, but even with his incredible strength, he struggled to move under 50 times normal gravity. He couldn't move and he couldn't breathe. Deep inside, part of him accepted his loss, but that thought was quickly extinguished. I am the symbol of peace. I will not lose here, thought All Might. All Might clenched his fist and using all of his strength began raising his arm. Deku saw this and increased the energy on his arm, forcing it back down. All Might gritted his teeth, feeling his muscles burn as he forced his arm up. Deku yelled, pushing out all of his power, but it wasn't enough. No matter how much power Deku put out, All Might was only slowed. Finally, All Might reached up and grabbed Ashito by the hair, pulling her over his shoulder. He held her in front of him before looking at Deku behind her. Will you save her? Asked All Might. All Might used all of his strength and threw Ashito as hard as he could at the entrance gate. He knew how strong she was, so this wouldn't kill her, but it would definitely put her out the fight. Ashito shot through the air. Just before impact, she was covered in a dark green aura. Deku gently put her on the ground before realizing his mistake. Still facing the entrance gate, Deku saw All Might's massive shadow cover his own. All Might slowly put his hand on Deku's shoulder. Very heroic. I'm proud of you, said All Might. Before the words even hit Deku's ear, All Might buried his fist into Deku's stomach, throwing him backwards. All Might rubbed the back of his back whilst walking over to Ashito. She launched to the ground, trying to kick All Might across her face, but her leg was caught. The symbol of peace held her leg up in the air, letting her dangle upside down. You're using 20%. That's impressive. I didn't think you were so far along, said All Might. All Might saw Ashito wince in pain and the bruises covering her arms. I see. You were pushing our limits a little, weren't we? Well, I think it's time to end this exam. I'm sorry to say, but you have failed. All Might was cut off when a massive chunk of building smashed into him, knocking him into the office building across the street. Ashito fell to the floor, and Deku landed next to her, panting. He was bleeding from the mouth, but still standing. Can you still fight? Asked Deku. 20% is tearing me apart, but I can handle it. What about you? Asked Ashito. I'm running out of energy. We need to finish this, said Deku. Deku reached out a hand towards the building he was previously smashed into. Ashito looked over in shock as the building began coming apart. Green light covered the rubble and began compressing it. With a flick of his wrist, Deku's weapons floated over to him and began spinning around his body. That was an impressive attack, Izuku, said All Might. Deku didn't bother responding. With a flick of his wrist, he shot all of his micro rocks at All Might. Even with their extreme density and speed, they couldn't break the simpler piece of skin. However, they were definitely painful. All Might covered his face, trying to defend against the onslaught. "I need to help," said Ashito. Ashito fired blasts of acid at All Might that Deku wrapped in energy, increasing their speed. They weren't high strength because Ashito didn't want to melt All Might, but they still hurt. "Damn it, these kids are strong," said All Might. All Might took a step back and found himself up against the wall. He looked back and saw a smirk covering his son's face. Using all of his power, Deku pulled the wall down on top of All Might before taking off at max speed towards the exit. Ashito was right behind him, sprinting with all of her power. "That will only slow him down for a moment. We can make it," said Deku. "I wouldn't be so certain," said All Might. All Might appeared between the two. Before either could react, All Might buried Ashito's head into the ground. He went to punch Deku next, but his fist smashed into a green barrier instead. "A strong barrier," said All Might. All Might pulled back his fist. "But it won't be enough," said All Might. All Might's punch smashed into Deku's shield, and the massive hero reached in, picking Deku up by the collar. "I'm impressed that the two of you were able to hold on so long," said All Might. Using all of his power, he could gather Deku pushed himself backwards. He shot down the street, crashing into a lamppost. "Is this your final stand?" said All Might. All Might looked over at Ashito, who was lying unconscious in a pile of rubble. "My shield isn't strong enough. How can I block his attacks?" thought Deku. Deku thought back several years before, when he was training with his mother. "Treat your energy like normal matter. It has density and strength," said Tornado. "The more I spread it out, the weaker it is," said Deku. Deku's eyes opened in the present as he saw All Might's massive fist bearing down on him. "This is the end," said All Might. All Might was about to finish the exam, but his fist never hit Deku. Instead, a rush of pain ran over All Might. He looked down at his hand, seeing that one of his fingers had been broken. "What the hell?" asked All Might. He looked at Deku, seeing a small green orb no bigger than a golf ball hovering in front of him. "Condensed shield," said Deku. All Might swung again, and the tiny ball shot down, blocking his attack. "Impressive," said All Might. That's nothing," said Deku. "Do it now!" yelled Deku. Deku wrapped All Might in his aura and began manipulating his gravity again. However, it wasn't downwards this time. Deku was sending all of that directional energy towards the entrance. The moment Deku was ready, Ashito came in, hitting All Might across the face with a massive spin kick, sending him hurtling down the road. The two immediately took off, desperately trying to get to the exit, but Deku's heart fell when he looked behind them. All Might was sprinting towards them and would catch them before they got to the finish. "I thought he'd be a harder time against that much force. It was really difficult for him earlier," said Ashito. "I tried to use 50 times, but I must have run out of energy," said Deku. Ashito glanced back at All Might. She could see that he was struggling to run and was considerably slowed. "He's running out of steam as well. We need one last big attack," said Ashito. A smirk spread across Ashito's face as she explained her plan to Deku. "You are crazy, but it might just work," said Deku. Deku took off, flying straight towards All Might. "Foolish," said All Might. Just before the two hit each other, Deku skidded to a halt and slammed his hands together. The buildings either side of All Might crumbled and slammed into the massive hero. "This won't be enough," said All Might. All Might saw Deku flick his wrist, then saw a massive glow of green and pink light quickly growing behind Deku. The green-haired hero stepped to the side as a hypersonic Ashito shot past. Using every last drop of energy he had, Deku shot Ashito at All Might like a human bullet. Ashito's body was glowing pink and was burning with power. "Good work, kids," said All Might. Ashito's foot smashed into All Might's face with incredible power that even All Might couldn't defend against. 100%, yelled Ashito. All Might was thrown all the way down the fake city and slammed into the entrance wall, becoming embedded in it. Deku ran over to Ashito and picked her up with the last drop of energy he had left. Her leg was broken, but her cheerful demeanour still shone through. "Can you hurry up? This really hurts," Ashito said jokingly. "Keep complaining and I drop you," said Deku. All Might could see them nearing the exit, but didn't want to fight anymore. You have fought well. You deserve this victory, said All Might. Deku passed the finish and collapsed to the floor. Ashito crawled over and lying next to him on the grass. I swear I'm going to sleep for a week, said Ashito. Deku didn't respond, so Ashito looked up at him, confused, only to see that he was already asleep. So lazy, said Ashito. She smirked, putting her head down on the grass. She was just planning on waiting until someone came to help them. End of chapter 7.